What is the purpose of the world? The world was created only for connection, that is, for attachment to the Creator, and this and the soul of Shaddai will grant them understanding. It means the soul that comes from the Almighty, who is called Shaddai. Because he said to the world, enough, will grant them understanding. That is, this thing will give them the wisdom to understand that the world was not created for materiality, but only so that we could return to our root. To return to its root and become one with it, and the root is infinity. If so, then the branch is also infinite, because it is nullified in existence. Like a drop that falls into the vast sea and returns to its source, it becomes one with the seawater, and it is impossible to distinguish it as something separate. That is, nothing in the world can move from one state of being to another until it passes through a state of nothingness, that is, through an intermediate state in which it ceases to be what it was. This is a very important rule in everything. And this nothingness, no one can comprehend it, because it is as if it exists before the creation itself, and from it a new creation is born. Like, for example, a chick from an egg, at the very moment when the destruction of the egg is complete, and the formation of the chick has not yet begun, that is nothingness. And in philosophy this is called Yuli, the first matter, which is completely impossible to comprehend, because it is the force before creation. And it is called Tohu, emptiness, and also the seed, which sprouts, for example, the 5 types of grains and other seeds, will not begin to grow until it rots in the ground and its essence disappears, as is well known. In order to reach the state of nothingness, which is the stage that precedes creation, and it is called wisdom, that is, a thought that has no revelation. And then, from this, creation comes forth, for you, the Almighty, have made everything in wisdom. Yuli refers to material things. And all of this was from dust, meaning from Yuli, and everything returns to dust. That is, to the primordial material, Yuli. And it turns out that if a person wants to become a new creation, not bodily and not material, not striving for materiality, but for the Almighty, he must bring his thinking, as much as possible, to the level of awe, which will lead to humility, to reach the stage of nothingness. And then the Almighty will create him anew. And he will be like a spring, constantly flowing, like a river that never ceases. This is explained, and grasp all of this. The Creator did the reverse process. He made existence out of nothing, and the purpose of this emergence of selfhood is that this state of existence should once again return to the state of nothingness, as it was before creation, in order to feel the Creator and not oneself. And this is the entire essence of our work. Everyone thinks they understand this, but in reality, this is not understanding at all. True understanding is when a person sees this in their own mind as something undeniable, even if they have never heard or learned it from others. And they comprehend it themselves through attachment and contemplation of their soul, constantly thinking about the Almighty. Because someone who does not think about the Almighty constantly, even if they believe in Him, still, it is not truly real before them. After all, what is always before their heart is the world, not contemplation of the Almighty. But the one who does not think about the world at all, and in everything they see, they think about the Almighty, that it depends on Him, and with great passion, as I gave you an example. If someone looks at a woman's clothing, if he is attached to the desire for a woman, God forbid, he doesn't pay any attention at all to the embroidery or the golden garments. But his heart immediately longs for the woman herself who is wearing them. And who isn't like this? And if his heart is pure from this desire, he simply looks at the clothing. So it turns out, both are looking at the same thing, but each one sees something completely different. It's the same here, with a 1,000-fold difference between impurity and holiness. The one who always strives toward the Almighty. Everything he sees in the world, he sees the Almighty in it, whose powers give life to everything. Here's another principle for you, friends, to come to awe before the Almighty. To see behind all events and seek a connection with Him, and to believe that it is only He who does all this. So it turns out that if we merit such attachment, then we will think of ourselves as nothing but the Almighty, who gives us life. He is the only reality, and besides Him, there is nothing else. And this is what is said there as well, you, Lord, are one, you created. And it would seem, why repeat you? But this is a separate statement. You, Lord, are one, meaning there is nothing in the world except the one Almighty. The creation of the worlds was for the sake of the pleasure and comfort that the Almighty would receive. Pleasure comes when we strip ourselves of all the desires of this world, purifying our hearts from longing for them, and those desires become repugnant to us in our very hearts, to such an extent that our passions and aspirations for the Almighty enter our hearts through the Torah, prayer, and good deeds. And most importantly, to cleanse your heart of qualities like envy, hatred, anger, and pride, and to always strive for humility, so that through it you can cling to the Almighty with attachment, yearning, and longing. Because truly, if a person's soul is corrupt, it desires passions and bad qualities, for it comes from the side of death and impurity, which must soon be destroyed with God's help. And it seeks its root, dust, disappearance, and disintegration. All this is the opposite of the holiness of the Most High, which is eternal, one, blessed is He, and spiritual. When he says stripping away materiality, we know this concept as removing the garment of the material from oneself. This is what we are used to hearing in my books. And he will not feel at all that he is in a body. A person is bare, having removed the garment of materiality from himself. Then he is separated within himself from himself, and within himself he clings to the Most High, blessed is he, with great passion. And outwardly, he still performs bodily actions, like eating, marital relations, and the like. He does everything like everyone else, but inside he is like an angel, separated from matter, while outwardly, in the eyes of others, he appears like an animal. But if a person is wise, and he has a yearning to serve the Most High, and the Spirit of the Most High begins to awaken him, then even if his soul desires these bad things, if his soul truly knows that this is evil, then he wants to break it, even if it doesn't bring him pleasure. And in contrast to this, he is granted hidden goodness, and even in this world he is privileged to taste great delight in prayer, in Torah, and in the fulfillment of the commandments. After all, these commandments are not limited by time, but are obligatory for all the days of a person's life, every moment without interruption. That is, he says, there are commandments that you can do and then stop. These are commandments related to action or speech. And there are commandments that you can always fulfill. For example, the commandment of faith, that everything is done by the Creator, that the Creator controls everything, that there is no other force besides the Creator. This can be constantly cultivated within oneself and never disconnected from it. Why do we disconnect? We start getting involved in other things. They become more important to us. There is a spark of love for God and His delight, which has become coarsened and turned into material refuse. And through this pleasure, a person separates himself from the refuse, and the passion for the refuse becomes repulsive to him because of wisdom. It's like when a wise person is given a bad coin or a piece of clothing dyed in a very nice color. If he is foolish, it seems to him that all of this is wonderful. But the wise person understands that the color is beautiful, yet the substance itself is bad. And with his wisdom, he separates the good from the bad. And know today and lay it upon your heart that the Lord is God, there is none else. And he wrote that this does not mean there is no other God, because that is self-evident, but rather that there is no other essence in the world except for his essence, blessed be he. Because everything that exists before creation was within his power. And he poured out his power and created for them spiritual and physical shells. And his powers give life to all, and without them, that is, if everything were to return to its source, as it was before the creation of the world, then neither the spiritual shells nor the material ones would have any existence at all, just as before the creation of the world. And only He, the Most High, would be exalted.